we're in the early stages of discussing the resolution, not least because the military action has only just begun rather than has completed, but I think we will get there. Can I just say this about international support? There is actually widespread international support for this military action, and within Europe, 14 of the 25 countries which will form part of the new European Union, and those 25 will be round the table in mid-April, actually supporting this action. Yes, Ellen Goodman.
Could you please tell us a bit more about how much notice did we have of last night's attack? And also, will there have to be another discussion between the Prime Minister and the President before British troops actually go into action? And can you give an assurance to the troops and the mothers of those troops, if you like, that before British troops are sent into action, it will be the decision of our Prime Minister, and they're not just going in under the command of the Americans?
Alan, first of all, the premise of your question is, with respect, rather mistaken. There have been endless and very detailed discussions with our American colleagues and the other allies directly involved in the military planning over months and then weeks, and intensively over days, about the nature of the campaign. And it should go without saying that because we have committed 42,000 troops there and are very heavily involved in all the military preparations, that if the strategy is one which is a shared and agreed one. Some tactical decisions are made by strategic commanders on the ground, but as I think Jeff Hoon said this morning on the radio, the Prime Minister and he were informed in advance, and so I think it was although because I was phoned, woken from my bed in the small hours of this morning, I can't tell you exactly what time it was, except it was very early and shortly after I'd gone to sleep. Yes?
Can you tell us something more about your conversation with the Turkish Foreign Minister and when you think you might get an answer about using their airspace?
I had a good conversation with Foreign Minister Gül yesterday. I'm going to see him in a meeting tomorrow in Brussels because he will be there for a bilateral. Foreign Minister Gül explained that there will be before the Turkish Parliament today a resolution providing authorization for the use of their airspace by foreign military forces, and he said that he was looking forward to that passing. Thank you. Yes.
Foreign Secretary, the first shots have been fired in this war. Can we then assume that the main assault is now imminent? And can you tell us, as we stand on the brink of whatever is to come, what the mood of Cabinet and War Cabinet was this morning?
Look, on your first point, I mean, it's a point I was making in Cabinet, and I don't mind lifting the veil to this extent, that the intensity of pressure on people in this room because of competing 24-hour television news services means that you require from us a running commentary on our forward military plans. But I understand those pressures, but I think the whole country will understand that for the most obvious reasons of safety, we cannot provide that commentary. And when there are announcements to be made, so far as military activity, they will be made by principally my colleague Jeff Hoon or the Ministry of Defence at an appropriate and safe moment. So far as the mood in Cabinet is concerned, it is a very sober and serious mood, but one of complete commitment and support for the strategy which the Prime Minister set out so eloquently and powerfully in his speech on Tuesday. Yes, sir.
How crucial is it, in your view now, that when you go into Iraq, that you discover weapons of mass destruction to justify the action?
Well, I think the answer lies in this 173 pages of the report which Dr. Blix published last week. Iraq has provided no credible explanations about the 10,000 litres of anthrax, the tons of VX, and so on. Just that. Yes, madam.
It's been reported that you asked to use the Turkish air bases yesterday.
Sorry, would you like to repeat the question for the benefit of
It's been reported that you asked to use the Turkish air bases. I wonder why English needs the use of those air bases now, and why so late today or yesterday, not before.
I was talking to Minister Gül about the use of airspace. We already have use of an airbase at Incirlik, in eastern Turkey, and I was also talking to him about the conditions for its use. Thank you. Yes, sir.
William Worsley, BBC. As you head for Brussels, Foreign Secretary, would you like to say what are the longer-term implications from a British government point of view of this split in Europe and the French and German determination in particular to have a common foreign policy, perhaps with majority voting, a single foreign minister and so on, in view of the split not only over use of force in Iraq but also over relations with the United States? And secondly, do you accept that in view of the dismay and concern around the world, the conduct of the military operation in the coming days and the humanitarian operation will be crucial for whether or not you will have convinced the world of the justice of your actions this time?
Well, as far as your first question is concerned, I mean, it has always been the case that on some foreign policy issues in Europe, there are differences of opinion. And that is why we've always argued that foreign policy has to be an intergovernmental issue, where we agree where we can agree, but we take our own separate decisions where we cannot agree. And that is, in fact, the very clear position, particularly of the French government, who, of course, represent the Republic of France and not only an individual part of the European Union in the Security Council, just as do we. There are plenty of areas, as it happens, where the development of foreign policy is being productive, and that includes not least our work in the Balkans and our approval of the new force in Macedonia. As to your second question about international support, the point I would make in return, particularly to our French and German colleagues, is what is the alternative? Yesterday in the Security Council, Joschka Fischer said that the Security Council, agreed that Iraq's cooperation with the inspectors was unsatisfactory. He then went on to argue for his strategy. But his strategy is one which will simply run into the ground, as previous efforts to secure the disarmament of Iraq by exhortation alone always have done. And war is unpleasant. War should only ever be a last resort. There will be innocent civilians killed in this military action, and we cannot resile from that or use euphemisms to cover up that reality. But what we say is that the number of Iraqi lives saved by this military action will far exceed the number of people who sadly will be killed. It's a terrible calculation to have to make. It's one you have to make if there is to be a proper justification for military action. It is one we've taken, and we think it right. Just take a couple more questions. Yes, sir. Can we have the microphone here with Lamont, please?
The European Union is the largest provider of international aid. Do you accept that the current split between various members of the EU, France on one side and Britain on the other side, for example, is going to put into question the role of the EU in the reconstruction of Iraq after the war?
Well, I hope not. I mean, plainly, Europe is much more effective when it's united than when it's divided. And there is a division at the moment on the issue of military action in Iraq. But the European Union is a very resilient institution, and I believe that everybody recognises in Europe the need for us to come together to secure the humanitarian relief and the reconstruction of Iraq. It may take time before we get those terms finally agreed. Yes, Trevor Kavanagh.